The Access to Capital educational series, The Fundamentals of Startup Financing, is made possible by the generous financial support of the Truist Foundation. Access to Capital is an educational program of Verge and its affiliates, RAMP, the Regional Accelerator, Roanoke-Blacksburg Technology Council, and its partners, the Launch Place, the Appalachian Council for Innovation, and Blue Ridge PBS.
Hello, Scott, and thank you for being with us today to share the story of Luna Innovations, rags to riches and to IPO, all that happened in between. We're not going to have enough time to cover all the details, but we're looking forward to hearing what you can share with us today that will inform our audience about what to take into consideration when a company's looking to go public.
Yeah, well, I definitely appreciate being here and being able to tell the story. It really is a great story, most of which started probably before my time, but I can fill you in the last 20 years that I've been involved with the company. But you know, really the foundation and how it came to be is really quite interesting.
So tell us a little bit about Luna Innovations. What kind of company is it, and what's it known for right now? Sure,
it's a company that's based on fiber optics. So we do interesting things, you know, with fiber. So everyone thinks of fiber as something that transmits data, especially in today's age, fiber to the home, and everyone's switched away from getting, you know, kicking cocks to the street and things like that. But we use fiber in many different ways. So we do transmit data, we measure data using fiber, but we also use the fiber as the sensor itself. And an example is, you know, we'll put fiber all over a bridge to measure the integrity of that bridge. So I always explain it as, think of the your central nervous system in your body, right? So, and our system is like your brain. So in your body, if you stub your big toe, your mind tells you your big toe hurts. Not one of your toes, not below the knee, not below the waist, but your big toe specifically. That's what we're doing with fiber. So we'll put it on a plane or a bridge and we can tell exactly where the problem is rather than just in general.
So that sounds like a wide open space of applications and paths that the company could have taken over the years. I was reading a little bit about the company, a huge number of patents that it holds, and a lot of different things that have happened. So we know a little bit about Luna today. How did Luna start?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. You know, the credit goes to a professor that came out of Virginia Tech, Kent Murphy. And you know, Kent started off, he was working as a janitor at ITT when he was at William Fleming High School. And one of the typical super smart underachiever kind of folks that graduated lower end of his class at Fleming and was continued to work at ITT. And I think a lot of the engineers took a liking to him and said, you know, you're doing some great stuff here and you're taking interest in what we're doing. He got 2 patents filed while being a janitor at ITT.
That's incredible.
And they encouraged him to go to college. So he went to Virginia Tech for a couple of years. He went to Virginia Western for a couple of years and then transferred to Virginia Tech and stayed at Virginia Tech all the way through undergraduate degree in electrical engineering and all the way through getting his PhD. Well, while he was there, he wrote a proposal to the government on an SBIR contract. And he was awarded that in 1990 and then started the company in 1990 in his garage based on winning an SBIR contract. There's a lot of government contracts out there through the SBI, the Small Business Innovation Grant Program, that really are a lot of entrepreneurs need to be aware of because it's just writing a proposal and a lot of them get funded. Now, the first phase 1 might be for $100,000, but then the follow-on could be, you know, $1.5 million, $2 million. And that's kind of how he started, you know, kind of the company while pursuing his tenureship at Virginia Tech and did actually achieve that. So it was really kind of a, you know, kind of a neat story from underachiever to, you know, kind of, you know, superstar, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a level of commitment that he had to do that kind of work, all of that at the same time.
Yeah.
And there must have been support in the region too for that. Can you speak a little bit about that part of the story?
Yeah, and you know, so you know, really running the contract work for the first 10 years of Luna's you know, life, and doing the contract work, but always thinking about what could come out of the contracts. Is there a product or some kind of commercialization that could be done in that process. And he came up with an interesting idea that was going to be in the telecommunications space. Now think about late 90s, early 2000, telco was the big thing. And so he thought he'd raise individual money. So, the local funds, Southwest One, and Mark Warner had some funds in the area, Greg Feldman, managing money. And that's kind of how I got involved in the company. He spun that product out into its own company, called it Luna Technologies, and that got funded. And really that was the beginning of taking off. So a ton of local investors that got involved in that, to invest in it and continue on raising money to have them progress more quickly.
So what you just expressed was over what period of time? Did you say 10 years?
Well, the first 10 years really, focused 100% on the contract research work with an eye towards commercialization.
Gotcha. Okay. Thinking,
is there something, if I've won a phase one, I've won a phase two, I might have even gotten some follow-on money, some phase three money, what can I do with that now? And he had a product within the telecommunications space that would measure loss across a network. So think about a network that runs in a data center. We've all heard about these data centers. Amazon has data centers and Facebook and all these different companies. And they have fiber everywhere. Well, he developed a product that could measure loss. So we could say, hey, you have a problem 50 meters down, and you could fix that problem. So, all the data centers, they have to have some system that gives them, the credibility of their network. So he developed that and said, I think that can be its own company. So he formed its own company, and that's when we went out to the region and said, hey, I'd like to raise money.
Yeah.
It would go to folks like Ramp, and we were talking about, you had venture capital funds, and the Ramp equivalents has been around in the region for over 20 years. They just have had different names. But that angel kind of investor helping entrepreneurs, he was a professor. He didn't necessarily know how to run a standalone company. So, folks in the region would help, assist him in setting up financials.
Yeah, I think the timeline for me is a great reminder for our audience of this. This doesn't happen overnight, and it takes a lot of thought and intention and strategy over time. So to that point, what made Luna choose the path of doing an IPO in the first place? Yeah,
well, like I said, the Luna Technologies spin-out was formed in 2000, end of 2000. So. And Luna IPO'd in 2006. But as a standalone company, Luna Technologies, again, that's how I got involved. And then in 2002, the telecommunications market really crashed. So it had a big issue. So, we had to lay off a lot of people at Luna Technologies, the spin-off company. And we kind of jumped in just to kind of keep it alive. And that's where I jumped in. And I always tell my wife I took an interim job, 20 years ago. And here I am. So, but it was struggling, and we gave it some more money locally, investors, we gave it some more money, and Luna Innovations ended up acquiring that back. And the enticement to us investors was Luna Technologies acquired back by Luna Innovations, and then Luna Innovations, the parent with all these contracts and all these different ideas, would then go public and provide a return to those investors in Luna Technologies. So, Luna Innovations, in my opinion, was sitting on a ton of ideas that just needed to get some bigger money, not the hundreds of thousands. It needed, 20, 30, 40 million dollars to invest in some of these ideas that were going to take some time to get across this gap of funding that we all talk about. Gets to a point, and you have this gap till you can get to kind of the promised land, whether promised land is profitability.
Right.
So it needed that money, and the IPO was a way to kind of do that.
So say more about the IPO journey. What does that look like? What did you have to do to prepare for that? And
it was chaos a little bit, I would say. Luna Innovations had, its year end was 10/31. Because of being a government contractor, it thought 10/31 was a more relative kind of time frame. Well, when we went to go public, all the investment bankers were like, that'll be confusing to the investors, so we got to switch to 12/31. So going back 5 years and changing all the financials. And again, I had taken on the CFO role at that time. Kent Murphy was the CEO. So a lot of documents that went back and forth to prepare for this. And you're hiring bankers, you're hiring lawyers, accountants. So all of a sudden you have Ernst & Young, you have Cooley as your attorneys, and you have all these big names out there that come with big price tags. So, you're going through this. One thing that was interesting, we did go to Carillion, And Carillion had never done any of these investments. They invested in the funds, but they never invested in the company. But we went to them and said, here's why we think this is a really good idea with all these ideas that Kent and Luna Innovations had. And Carillion did agree. And Carillion invested $15 million. And it really was preparing. So the $15 million came in prior to going IPO. And the thought was, number one, we had enough runway to cover these lawyers and accountants and all these folks to get to the IPO process, because there's money that's required just to get to the IPO. And get the money on the balance sheet at the end of 2005. So when we went out and talked to the investors to invest in the IPO at Luna, it didn't look like we were out there because we needed money.
Okay.
We had a firm balance sheet with $15, $16, $17 million of cash on the balance sheet. So people said, oh, you're going public because you have great ideas, not because you need the cash.
Not because it's a capital raise.
Right,
solely.
exactly. And it just got different people in the room. You know, when people heard that, it was just a different audience. So when you went to meet with different investors, they just kind of came in with a different mindset.
Sure. You're setting the stage.
That's right. That's right.
So what does the IPO process entail? Can you walk us through some of that? Well,
like I said, you go and you spend a lot of time putting what they call the S1 together. That's the registration document with the SEC. So, and in that is basically you describing what you do. You know, a big, thick, it's that onion skin kind of document that you get in the mail, the prospectus. But it's a very thick document where you go through 5 years of financials, you know, all these different things. So it takes a ton of time, probably takes, I would say 4 to 6 months to prepare that document. And you're in the attorney's office, or you're at the printers. The printers are Donnelly, are still the kind of the way that things go. And you're preparing for that. And then you decide when you're going to file and go public. So once you file that registration statement and say, I'm going to go and try to raise this money, it's then about a week to 10 days till you come back. And they call it either you have a book or you don't have a book. And a book means you went out and said, I want to raise $30 million. Do I have a book? Is the book filled with $30 million? Or you go, I'm at 20. Okay, well now what do I do? Do I go to 20 or do I lower the price? Someone says, I won't get in at 10, but if the IPO was at 8, I'd get in. Or, many times what everyone hears about now recently is they went out at 10 and it closed at 13 or 14. We were not that case. We were out trying to raise, the amount of capital we did. But that's about 10 days and then you go effective. And, you kind of ring the bell on the NASDAQ and all's happy days. And then you come back and say, okay, now what does it take to run a public company?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great segue. What does it take to run it, but what's different about it?
Yeah, well, everything's different.
Everything.
From being private to public, the end of quarters matter, because you got to go out and release earnings every quarter. And you are under the microscope for everything. Whether it be your financials, everything you do, the folks of us that are named executive officers, I can't do anything without reporting it to the SEC. If I bought, sold, I got a raise, if someone, said, we're going to give you a $100 bonus, it needs to be disclosed to the SEC. Shareholders want to know what the named executive officers are getting or doing. But the audits that are required, the 404 compliance, the compliance says, that you have internal controls that are proper. These are all things that are protecting shareholders in things like this. So they're all relevant. It's just things that as a private company, a board can say, hey, let's make sure that every check requires 2 signatures. Yeah. Well, the SEC is going to make sure, and you're going to have to come in and provide a document that says a third party came in and evaluated you. Cybersecurity, with ESG now, with reporting out, what is your level of diversity? How are you treating environmental issues and social issues and your governance? Do you have independent board members? Well, these folks don't just come your way. I mean, you have to go out and find these folks. And so it changes in everything you do. Public is, I was talking earlier, it's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
You are just under scrutiny. You're just on call at all times.
Yeah, so speaking about things that you've learned through this process, I think earlier you used the phrase when we were chatting about, there were left turns you took, or the company took, where maybe it should have been a right turn. Do you have anything that comes to mind that again, you can share with our audience to say, this is something the next time we do an IPO, or you're associated with one,
Yeah.
a lesson learned or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think
some wisdom there.
Yeah, when you're a private company, and if Kent Murphy was sitting here today, I think he'd say, when he owned all of it, and you kind of make all those decisions yourself, it was one thing. But then, when you choose to go public, it's just not your company anymore. You own a portion of it, but you've got a board of directors. You have shareholders that you have to pay attention to. You have annual shareholder meetings. So I think that it wasn't a right that should have been a left, but I think it certainly is. Think through before you bring that outside money or outside ownership into your company, because it will change the way that you operate the company. And there's a lot of things where you just would have done things. Human capital. At the end of the day, especially at Luna, that has all this technology, over 1,000 patents, things like that. I can't do it. So it's one of those. Okay, well, I can't just say, oh, well, get out. I'll just do it myself. Well, I can't do it myself, right? You're all about the human capital. It's all about the folks that that do this work every day. Luna never hires anyone that's in an unemployment line. So which means. And I say that it means that I got to go out and entice someone to leave a job to join Luna. So they've got to leave somewhere where they are. Maybe they're disgruntled, maybe they're not, but to have them come and join Luna. And I think that human capital side of it is so important. To pay attention and I follow the philosophy of just be transparent. We have offices in obviously Roanoke, Blacksburg, and then we're in Atlanta, Northern California, Southern California, and then London and Germany and Dubai. So getting out in front of the company, people want to hear from you. They want to know, hey, I know I'm a small cog in the wheel, but where do I fit? What's the strategy? Why do we buy this? Why do we sell that? They just want to know. Everyone is interested in why are we doing that? Because at the end of the day, people say, what does it mean to me? How can I add more? And I think if you're transparent with folks and you go out, so I think, COVID was tough, because you couldn't be out in front of folks. Zoom only gets you so far. Teams only get you so far. But being flexible, listening to the employees about what they really want and what drives them. Because I can tell you, it's a part of it is compensation. Most of it in this world we have 80 plus PhDs that work at Luna. 200 of our workforce has master's degrees. So, it always guarantees that I'm not the smartest guy in the room. So I walk in and I admit it right away. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. So, but it's interesting to be around these folks and make sure that you listen and be transparent. They want that. They welcome that.
Yeah, with all that intellect in the room, they're going to want to know. That's a way to build trust, right? Is that knowledge sharing?
Yeah. Well, and I think convincing of what's your value add. There's a lot of folks that go through a lot of schooling to get, several PhDs, and they go, I know I'm very good at what I do. What do you do? What value do you have? And I think when they hear you talk and they hear you go out and tell the story about what we do, that's kind of my job, to kind of keep it all together and make sure we get the right team together, get the right CFO, get the right head of human resources, make sure that you have your eye on diversity, make sure you have your eye on all these different aspects that people expect you to have your eye on.
Yeah. So the pros and cons of an initial public offering, that's probably part of the story too. Yeah. Can you share part of that story with us? What are the pros for any company to choose an IPO path versus what are some of the cons?
Well, and I've talked about some of the cons, and the process that we went through in going public was, costs a lot of money. I mean, to be a public company, it's probably, I don't know, certainly north of $1 million just to be a public company, in what the SEC requires of you in filing of the documents and filing quarterly 10Qs and then filing a 10K and annual shareholder meeting. So there's a cost in it. There's cons to that. I think the positive of it is that you have access to kind of capital, right? And you have access to shareholders. So you have a tradable instrument in the stock itself, and I think that's motivating in many ways to employees. You can give restricted stock units to employees and reward them in equity and make them a part owner of this. So they say, hey, if I do work late, or I do come in on a Saturday and we work hard at this and achieve this, I'm going to benefit from that as well, because you're constantly being on this performance trail. Everyone knows how well you're doing. They look at it and say, wow, the stock's at this or the stock's at that. I mean, there's no one that doesn't see me at a cocktail party and go, I saw the stock's down. or hey, I saw the stock's up, whatever. So I think there's a positive with that. We offer, talking back to that human capital, we offer an employee stock purchase program. So you can offer the stock for them to buy it at a 15% discount, and it gives them a feel for, being owners. So not only can you give them as part of incentive, but you can make a program out there that lets them do that. We have, for example, a bring your child to work thing. So if you have a child that's over 16, for 30 days, they come to work with you in the office that you're in. So in Blacksburg, mother brings her son to work every day for 30 days, and we pay them, for that. And at the end, the only deliverable is a one-page white paper saying, "What did you learn?" And so it creates that bond between, kind of mother and son in this instance, and they get to see what it's like. All of us are wondering, like, what is our children going to do in the summer? And they get to do that for 30 days. And if they have the next year, then they can go to one of our other offices. So they can say, hey, I want to go to our London office for 30 days. All right, go to your London office. And I want to work not with mom in engineering, but I want to work, in finance. Okay, go work in finance for 30 days in our London office. Same white paper, Luna does that. So it's just creating that kind of one Luna family kind of thing. So that's an advantage, I believe, in being public, in being able to offer some of those things that it would be difficult as a private company to do.
That's fantastic. I've never heard of a program like that at any company.
People take advantage of it. It's great, because they go, I want to go to, outside San Francisco. I want to go to outside LA, where our office is, for 30 days. Okay. Now it's real work. I mean, you got to be there. You got to be there when the doors open and do meaningful work. I mean, it's not going to be a cakewalk, but I get to go live in LA for 30 days.
So that's one advantage. Do mergers and acquisitions? I noticed that the
certainly.
company, how does that play into this path as well?
Yeah. Well, we did a major acquisition back in 2015, and we did an all stock deal. So we acquired a company using our stock. I mean, we didn't have the cash to buy them, so we could raise capital through and do a stock purchase of this company out in Michigan. So that was a big deal for us. So that's a huge advantage, like I said, in having that security, that instrument that is sellable, and that instrument being the stock.
Right. So you've got more tools in your
Absolutely, absolutely. And you get on people's radar. The investment bankers know you because you're public. I mean, they just don't. If you're a private company, it's just hard to get that recognition. But I'm out, to the street every quarter with earnings.
Right.
I'm out every month with a press release talking about we just won this big contract with someone, or we did this interesting install of a bridge or a tunnel or a dam, things like that. So you're able to go out and communicate out to the market, and people know you. So you get more activity in that mergers and acquisitions type of role. People know who you are.
Definitely elevates your profile.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
It certainly does.
Well, there's a lot more questions that I would love to ask and talk with you about, but unfortunately we're running out of time. So I really appreciate your time today. Do you have any parting words or advice that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I would just say to local folks, just reach out. I mean, we all kind of are accessible to answer anything. I'd love to give advice on right turns, left turns, whatever it may be. But I think it's there. I think, don't be discouraged. This region, I didn't grow up in this region, but I've been here for 20 years, so I consider myself, kind of this region. And it's super open to ideas, very encouraging. There's many folks out there that, like Greg and others and you and Ramp, that are out there, really encouraging you to come forward. And I really would, because we're all accessible. No one holds themselves up as I'm too busy.
Yeah, across the board. I came into this job just recently in July, and to a person, they are generous, hospitable, available, accessible in ways that honestly I didn't really expect across the board.
And that's different than Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia has their tech council and things like that. The RBTC Northern Virginia has their own.
Right.
But when we've gone to it, and it's so much more difficult. I think people, whether they're they just are busier or whatever it may be, it's just harder to break into that network. Here, it's you can really get into it, and folks are willing to dive in and help you.
Oh, well, we appreciate you
Yeah.
being part of the
Sure.
region, and 20 years we're going to count you as ours.
All right.
And not
Yeah,
let you go.
exactly. There you go.
So thank you for your time today, and we look forward to learning more and watching Luna as a public company grow and evolve. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I appreciate it. Yep.
Jonathan, thank you for joining us. We're so excited to hear about your capital journey. You've been through 2 startups now, one that you launched and exited, and now starting another one. You've seen all kinds of different types of ways entrepreneurs raise money.
Right.
Excited to hear your story, and I think we have a lot to share with our entrepreneurs.
I look forward to this.
So start off with interactive achievement and the background early in your career, going into being the founder of your first company.
Yeah, so we went through we'll go through the different capital types of, we pretty much have hit everything now. When we started there, I went out and pitched it, right? I had no idea what I was doing. I was a teacher, I was a principal, assistant principal in Franklin County, which I'm very glad we were there. I'm very glad we were in Southwest Virginia, just from a business aspect, and I'll go further into that later. And I'm not just saying that, I want everybody to know what I'm about, the story I'm about to tell is, I'm not trying to pump up anything or anyone, it's just the truth of what happened. So we tried to get loans. I pitched it to potential investors, and nobody wanted to do interactive achievement. And so my wife and I, we did the friends and family round. Basically, my wife and I and my best friend, Matt Mahler, who was a computer programmer, the three of us, my wife and I borrowed everything we could. He quit his job and basically worked for ramen noodles in Mountain Dew for a couple of years, and we built interactive achievement. And so that was the first round of funding. It was really interesting. On pieces of paper, I had every dollar, what I was going to do with it, because we had to build content. We had to have third-party programmers help Matt, and it was just all these things I remember. It was really interesting. And then we started to grow. The key there, that gave us the opportunity to bring on the third leg of our stool, who was just amazing, which is Jacob Gibson. He was out of Franklin County, played for Tech, but just a brilliant mind. Didn't know that when he was 25, but the friends and family got us to there. And then we, as a team, got us to 800,000, 1.6 million, 2.6 million. We started to really grow. Now in that growth, I didn't know what to do. And so just on a side note, my wife had me talk to Ken Ferris, who then, now this was I just bought the guy a beer, and I said, what do you do? We went from 100,000 to 800,000. I didn't know. Growth is the worst thing that can happen, the best thing and the worst thing. Because you have to hire ahead of time and invest. You have to have the capital to invest. Now you can create that capital like we were in the beginning. And so Ken, of course, then brought Russ Ellis and Leon Harrison. And so I would meet with them every month for lunch and buy those guys lunch, and they would give me advice on how to invest and how do we do this. And so then we started growing. And there's a little known fact with interactive achievement is every bit of capital that we raised or did, it came out of an RBTC event.
I love it.
It just really is.
I love it.
It's just amazing that actually happened that way, right? But as we grew, we all of a sudden we just came to a halt. We had to rewrite the product, and we just didn't know what we were going to do. And at this time, I was in a president's council with Jim up in Blacksburg. He had different groups together, and that's where the idea for a board of directors came out. Now, we didn't have to do that. I mean, we were the owners, but there was such turmoil inside of us now. So all of a sudden, the founders started fighting a bit, and but we needed to have a CEO. We needed to have a structure, but we also had owners. I used to always say, when you walk in the building, there's no shareholders.
Yeah.
Right? We all have jobs.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
I don't care that you own shares. We have a job.
Yeah.
And so that was getting a little, with all of us, including me.
How many employees did you have at that time?
About that time, we had about 30, 35 employees.
Okay.
And so we put a board of directors in place, that group out of the RBTC. And then my wife had one businesswoman, Janie Whitlow, was phenomenal. And then we brought in education, Linda Petrie in out of Floyd County. Floyd, I love Floyd. Anyway, that formed our first board, and they had the ability to fire me. Now, my wife and I were the majority owners of the company, but they could remove me because I realized my shares could be worth more than my salary ever will be. So if I'm screwing that up, you know, I'm not only hurting myself, I'm hurting everyone else. And so we put that in place. And so that got us to our second type of funding, which was, I was at an RBTC event. We were going through this rewrite. It was costing us an immense amount. And I met somebody from the SBA, had no idea what the SBA could do, had nothing. And I'll never forget, she looked at me and she said, well, do you have access to capital? And I said, well, we can borrow against our house. We had our home and a rental. And she said, whatever you can get, we can double it. And we'll guarantee the loan. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
They're like, no, you're growing. And so that got us to the Series A. So friends and family, SBA loan, Series A.
Yep.
And to do the Series A, I was at an RBTC event.
A common theme.
Common theme. Yeah. Corey Donovan had met a guy named Matt Spetzler, who Matt went to Salem High School. Matt is one of the most successful investors now. I mean, he works for one of the top companies. Him and his group and his team are his friends. They're all Matt is just a phenomenal investor. Anyway, we were one of their first investments. His friends and them wanted to do an investment, and he wanted to pick the region. He was visiting his family. He talked me into doing a Series A, and we weren't going to. But because we had a board of directors, to get the founders, keep in mind, there's so many things I would do different now, getting set up for that. Yeah. It was a lot of work to get everybody on the same team and agreement. Even though my wife and I were, well, in a sense, between the two of us had a majority vote, we wanted Matt and Jacob and we always wanted the four of us to kind of be together because we needed the four of us, right, to be successful. And so in the end, we all agreed. We all did. It was unanimous, and we took Series A funding from Matt Spetzler and his team, and well, then it was just Katie barred the door, and I didn't understand that. So two things Matt Spetzler and his team brought into the world to us. So at the Friends and Family, we just had money.
Yep.
We had no business sense at all. We had hard work,
Yep.
right? But we had no business sense. I probably learned how to spell business.
That's where you probably should have gone through RAMP if RAMP existed at the
If
time.
RAMP had existed, we
Yep.
would have been the quintessential RAMP one. But RAMP didn't, right?
Yep.
The SBA, the RBTC then kind of becomes my business mentors, right? I joined the president's councils, the CEO councils. I got what I call the three wise men out of, so that becomes my world of learning now about, I don't have to, what was great is I got to learn from Leon Harris's mistakes, Russ Ellis's mistakes, and Ken Ferris's mistakes. And if I was willing to listen, I didn't have to make the same mistakes they did.
Yeah.
Right?
So important.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. The amount of money those guys saved me was insane. So that gets us to then the Matt Spetzlers. I don't know what to do with Matt. What does that mean? Does Matt Spetzler not control everything? What does it mean? I don't know what this means. But what I did learn was my board looked at me and said, this is a good man. Matt Spetzler is a good man. Now he's an investor. When you take on that investment, there's an exit somewhere. There's no investor who's not going to want to exit. There's some form of liquidity event. Doesn't always mean sale, but there's something. But we all agreed that group fit our culture.
Yeah.
Matt and his family, Matt and his buddies, his friends, his investors. So that was very important. A lot of people just don't want to take money. The other thing that they brought, the second thing, was I didn't know what I didn't know, right? I didn't understand. I didn't know that, because I just didn't know. I didn't understand hiring a real C-level team in, what that could do for your company.
Absolutely.
And so I brought in top executives. Matt really helped interview, and the board helped me interview. And what was great when Matt came in and he met the board, he said we shouldn't change the board at all, which was great. How many investors do that? I don't know. But and then 2.5 years later, that's a whole story of getting to an exit. the last thing we did, and then Power School came in and bought out Interactive Achievement. And so that was that capital journey quickly.
Yeah, while you were with Interactive Achievement, when you were getting close to the exit,
Yes.
what did you need to do then to set yourself up? And then we'll talk about now with your current startup, what you would do different. But with Interactive Achievement, how did you set up the exit?
So when you take on an investor, I just don't think you're going to exit without an investor coming in somewhere, some way. I just don't. That could happen, but I would say once you have that, so I would talk to Matt, what's our, he does this all the time. This is what they do. Do we look at, as we're driving the value? Now keep in mind, once we took that on, we had grown 5%, I think, the year before. Once we took that on, the capital on, we grew 60 and 70% year over year, and which is nuts. We went from 40 employees to 94 to 100. Wow. Yep. Yeah. We talk about feeding the economy, right? And so I had to sit down with him, really, and kind of him teach me, right? And now keep in mind, my board members had all experienced it. Russ Ellis, Leon Harris. So I had all of them.
And to have that knowledge.
Oh, my gosh. So it's just insane. I mean, the things that, I remember sitting and having lunch with Russ Ellis one day just on the side and him just walking me through the story, right? And then the CEO council I was on. So I was on with Kevin Bloomfield and Marty Muscatello and Bonds Hart. Yeah. And we were all, just the 7 of us, and Michael Fleming. And I mean, there's just, I go through David, and anyway, there's just this whole group, and people going in and out. But anyway, we had all ended up exiting our companies. But I remember Kevin being the first and telling us what he did right and wrong. And so everything Kevin did right or wrong, I could either duplicate it or make sure I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Right. It was just a blessing. It was a blessing to have Kevin.
Those peers.
Oh, big time. Yeah. And so I had all of that going for us. We weren't looking to sell the company. But the spring of 15, I started getting calls. Keep in mind, we were Small Business of the Year. We were on the Inc. 500, 5,000. So we started getting, are you interested in taking on a major investment? Are you interested in selling? And so it got to the summertime, and I got with my board of directors, and I said, what should I do? And they said, well, let's take a look. You never know. We don't have to sell. Yeah. And we sat with Matt. The thing we had to do was Matt Spetzler, Mary Hagmeyer, and myself, because we controlled whether we were going to sell. You couldn't sell without us. Sure. Right. That just wasn't possible. And so we had to sit down and say, what number were we okay with? And we had to come to that agreement. We had to have that conversation. And we worked ourselves through it. And then we went out, and once again, we're hiring an investment bank. Well, why would we pay an investment banker that much money? I would have paid the investment banker double at the end of this. Signal Hill, and I tell them that all the time. Matt and the board are like, we're absolutely hiring an investment banker. Smartest thing we did. And law firms, and you get all these different things that I just would never have known, and that led us to that. So anyway.
So we've talked about, as you went into Interactive Achievement, you didn't have a goal of selling the company, and that wasn't on your radar. Now, starting your second company, how are you looking at your new company, Veracity, and through a different lens?
Yeah. So Interactive Achievement, the goal was to pay the electric bill. Yeah. Right. That's it. Not to borrow money this month. Remember, Jacob and I used to joke about that. When he started selling, we didn't have to borrow money. I swear I was probably as joyous that day was on the day when we sold the company. I was that joyous from a financial sense of, just goes to tell you. With Veracity, when I started with them, and we had another whole new group actually a group from Interactive Achievement came over, and we started Veracity. I said to everybody, sat them all down, I said, we're going to exit out of this company. Eventually, that's what we're going to do. Now, you can be a lifestyle company, or you can be one for growth and try. And lifestyle company is great, but then you need to make decisions as a lifestyle company would make. But if you want to grow your company to an essential exit, and that could be I go public. That doesn't mean you have to sell the company, but I could go and do an IPO and go public. There's so many different ways. Then you need to get in your mind, one, what is it going to take to do that? And so with Veracity, the first thing I did, because we didn't do it at Interactive, is I sat down with the shareholders and said, what's our goals here? What do we want to do over the next 5 to 10 years? What do we want to do? And so we all got on the same page from the beginning, day one. So that was off the table. We don't have to deal with that anymore. So.
Great. So looking back at Interactive Achievement and what you learned going through your first startup, with the different stages of capital that you raised, how will you approach raising capital in the early days of your new startup differently? Yeah,
we just did a seed round. So we funded it the first year and a half, and then my wife and I and the team, we funded it ourselves. But I didn't wait 7 years to go in, or 6 years or 5 years to go get capital. Once I saw the success starting to occur, and I saw the business model playing itself out, we went out and did a seed round immediately, because I know the kind of capital it's going to take to grow a company. Timing, reduced time, the dilution that we'll get from that, it's irrelevant to me. Dilution means nothing to me in my mind, because it's about value, not dilution. And so many entrepreneurs just miss that boat. I cannot explain to you. They make decisions on, I have to be a majority owner. Why? Why do you have to be a majority owner? I don't understand that. Why? You got good people around you? I mean, are you taking on, the devil as an investor? I mean, what's going on? Just asking. I don't need. If you put the right people around you, you put the right investors around you, then from that. You don't have to be the majority, as long as you're all working together, you're on the same path. You know what you want to do. So.
Yeah, in my opinion, your superpower is putting the right people around you and building out.
It's either that or superpower lucky, because I've had some. But we invested in those people too. So go back to Interactive Achievement. Take the region once again. I'm at an RBTC event. I meet a guy named Jeff Smith. He's an executive coach. So we bring him in. He really helped us figure out on the series. He was part of helping out with the team, and then helping when we got executives, and we was with Voltage Leadership at the time. And but Jeff came in and was coaching me, and so by the end he was coaching me, our executive team, and then we brought him in to coach our managers. And all those managers today that we invested in 8 to 10 years ago, the money we put into that sprouted jobs all over this region. So Crystal and Amy were managers, Crystal Wilson and Amy Robertson. They're now the Chief Revenue Officer and Chief Operating Officer and founders of Veracity with me. CJ Page left Power School after it was bought and ended up with Amy Ankrum, which we did an investment with Amy. And by the way, you invest in people, not just ideas. Amy was like, yes. That was an easy one. I know Marty Mescatel and Tim Lawson had invested in her, and so it was very easy for us to invest in her. Well, CJ went with her, grew with her, right? And then they exited theirs, and then the company that bought has put CJ in charge of the North American companies now. So he oversees that. Jacqueline Lackey was my HR director, and then was HR director for Qualtrics with Amy, who's now with Verge, oversees
helping us
with you, right?
Technology.
But she's grown into a leadership position there. We invested time, knowledge, wisdom into our young leaders who wanted to be taught, who wanted to grow. Many of them grew in Power School. It's just, I will tell you, the best thing we ever did was invest into that portion of our company. Yeah.
And it's been fun to watch where they go and how they've grown. And
that's like a head football coach watching assistants go out and take over. you know,
I love it.
just don't come beat me.
Yeah.
You know, but go ahead.
Well, Jonathan, thank you for being with us today. This has
Absolutely.
been fun. I think we could do it all day long.
Yeah,
There's so
yeah.
much knowledge, and I think for our young entrepreneurs to have mentors in the region and people they can look up to, like Russ Ellis and Leon and Ken and Marty. There's so many great mentors in this region. That's a true asset that we have here in the region.
Yeah, here's my final word to all the entrepreneurs out there. I was never alone in this region.
Yeah.
And that's hard, and that's hard for a lot of people to say, meaning they are alone.
Yeah.
I chose not to be alone, and this region provided me the vehicles if I wanted to grow and not be alone, and where we were going. And I embraced it like there was no tomorrow, and it was so great at any time when an employee died, when we struggled, when great things happened. I could pick up a phone and somebody in this region would answer at the other end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And I truly feel that
Awesome.
Verge, Ramp, RBTC, the foundation of the organizations growing with this technology ecosystem have been, the foundation is
Right.
from leaders like you and many of the people that you referenced. And we're trying to grow an ecosystem that's really resilient and make our founders, our entrepreneurs not feel like they're alone. So.
That's a key. And that's going to drive success, which will drive jobs.
Yeah.
Right? If we can do that, drive jobs in our community. I hope all the
Yes.
leaders and government leaders are listening.
Yes.
That you drive, that's the goal here. We want to drive great jobs in our community and grow this community because we have incredible assets.
We do.
It's from Virginia Tech to Virginia Western, Carillion. I mean, there is just great opportunity for us to grow in this region.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to build our ecosystem even stronger with you and many of these leaders. And thank you again for being
You're
with
welcome.
us.
Thank you for having me.